Welcome, team.
Awesome, cool crew. Let's rock it. I'm excited.
All right, let's jump in. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm mostly going to listen to my colleagues here. Gregory, you want to kind of set the field for us on what we're chatting about today?
Yeah, definitely. Welcome everybody. Excited to get into the details. We've been thinking of this as sort of a geeky deep dive into Regen Ledger 2.0 and specifically the new Ecocredit functionality that is live. And so we have representatives from both the engineering team and science team. So Ryan and Sam here with us. So it should be an interesting conversation. So I'll do my best to kind of guide us through with questions. If folks have questions, please feel free to just, raise your hand, or I'll also sort of be monitoring my Twitter. So if you want to at me or something, there's not really a chat room in here, but if you've got questions, feel free to sort of ping me and I'll try to monitor things. And we'll kind of rock from there. One thing I'd encourage people to do as we're walking through this, you could go through you could go to docs.regen.network if you're on your computer and you'd like to just sort of have stuff up there. You can see some of the details about the Ecocredit module. Overview, etc. So, without further ado, let's dig in. Maybe I'll start with just having Ryan and Sam both, if you guys don't mind, just saying a hello and maybe introducing yourselves to everybody.
Sounds great. Thanks, Gregory. Yeah, my name is Ryan. I work on Regen Ledger as software developer and developer relations, and I helped lead a deep dive recently on the Ecocredit module with Sam and Corey, and put together a blog post that overviews the Ecocredit module. As Gregory mentioned, checking out the docs while we're going through this would be really helpful, but also a quick summary of a blog post called Ecocredit on Regen Ledger that might be helpful to have a quick if you want to have something else in front of you. But yeah, here to answer any questions about the implementation on the technical side, where the Ecocredit module is going in the future, and where it's at today. And happy to be here. I'll have to.
Cool. Thanks. My name's Sam Bennett. I work with the Science and Registry programs at Regen. Have a background in software development as well as more applied sciences within kind of the remote sensing sphere. So kind of coming at this from a perspective of, what are the technical implementations of the Ecocredit module and what are the use cases? How can it actually be used? A lot of my work with the Registry program is working with methodology developers, project developers that have projects that are ready to use the Ecocredit module. So thinking through how do we use the metadata field? When does it make sense to merge credit classes versus create new credit classes? So excited to share my perspective and answer any questions you guys have.
Rock on. Well, so let's just start at a high level. What does the Ecocredit module do? Who's going to use it and what does it do? Ryan, you want to just give us a quick summary of that?
Sure. Yeah, the initial implementation of the Ecocredit module is focused on creating credit classes, which is essentially the primary abstraction for an ecosystem service credit. And when you create a credit class, you have an admin and issuers. The admin manages basically the information about the credit class, and the issuers are allowed to issue credit batches. And so in this initial implementation, we have these credit classes, these that support the issuance of credit batches. And then once those credits are issued in the form of a credit batch, they are tradable, or they can be retired, or they can be canceled. And that is the initial focus in terms of our implementation, is providing the support for these ecosystem service credits to be created, to be issued, to be tradable and retired. And in terms of who would be using this, maybe that would actually be something Sam could pop in here and provide a little bit of context on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, to me, I mean, the big thing about the Ecocredit module is it's really the first step towards decentralized governance of like who manages carbon credits, who manages eco-credits. In a more traditional sense, if you look at like Vera or Gold Standard, they are the sole issuers of any VCUs coming out of their ecosystem. So any methodology, whether it's a forestry methodology, a grasslands methodology, it goes through their program. And at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to be issuing these credits. With the Ecocredit module, we're allowing people to set credit class administrators, to set credit class issuers. So, if someone develops their own program that's focused on, let's say, agroforestry projects in Germany, they can come in and they can create a credit class. They can set the administrator to be someone within that program and the issuers to be let's say the people helping manage and run that program, representing those, German farmers working agroforestry projects. So we're really, while we're starting with a permissioned approach where people are getting voted in for credit class creators, this kind of first step towards digitizing and creating a Web3 style of eco credit creation and management, it's kind of like the first step. So,
yeah, awesome. So let's just take a step back and talk more about like where things are at now and where we want them to be. So, Sam, you were just mentioning, when the Ecocredit, like right now, Ecocredit module is live. At the moment, nobody is actually listed on Regen Ledger as an issuer. Is that correct?
Yep. So right now we started with a permissioned approach. So enable to become a credit class creator and create new credit classes, set administrators, so on and so forth. You have to get voted in via governance proposal. And so the first step is, for us at least on the registry team, is we're currently writing a proposal, which hopefully we'll release sometime in the next week, on becoming the first credit class creator within the ecosystem.
Right. So we launched this. Yeah. So this is, and let's take a step back. I think probably permissioned isn't the right word here, although we've been using it an awful lot internally. But there's a network-wide governance process to become a credit class administrator, right, is what we're saying. So Regen holders, people who have Regen staking tokens, are voting to enable, for instance, R&D Inc. in the interim to be issuing credits according to the Regen Registry program, which is the same program that we issued Carbon Plus grasslands, etc. And other people, other companies or registries can apply to become credit class administrators for specific credit classes that they may like to list on Regen Registry and bring into the marketplace. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah, just a little bit of clarification there. The credit class creator allow list is the ability to create credit classes. So the administrators of a credit class, like Sam was mentioning, we could create essentially a credit class on behalf of R&D and assign the administrator to another person that would manage that credit class. And so there's multiple opportunities within the Regen Registry program to at different levels in terms of governing a credit class, whether that's becoming an administrator or becoming an issuer. But this permissioned approach, that is a loose term on permissioned, but it essentially is to have the ability to submit transactions that include messages that create credit classes. So this is also, it's worth noting that this is also meant to be a temporary feature. In the future, the idea is that we'll have anyone be able to create credit classes on chain. And so this initial implementation was mostly focused on being permissioned due to the fact that we wanted to ensure that people that are creating credit classes on chain are going to be willing to do some data migrations when the time comes, because there are improvements that were planned for the Ecocredit module that are being implemented now in terms of supporting different project types, and that will require some migration in terms of data when we upgrade to the next version of Regen Ledger. So we wanted to ensure, one, that the network was going to be aligned with this permissioned approach, and that there would be going to be people that were creating credit classes would be willing to work with the community and our engineering team on the migration of some data. But yeah, so this initial permissioned approach is something that we're planning to keep for the time being, and it could be voted out. It's basically a parameter that can be voted upon if we want to change to a non-permissioned approach where anyone can create credit classes, and that is part of the plan in the future. So yeah.
Awesome. And let's talk a little bit now about the sort of vision. Maybe Sam, if you want to speak a little bit about the vision of Regen Registry as the first sort of blockchain-enabled, decentralized ecological asset registry system, and how that's sort of relating. You were alluding to that, but I think just diving in a little bit deeper would be super helpful.
Yeah. Okay. I think that there's a lot here, but I'll do my best to take a crack at it. So, I guess like the goal of the Regen Registry program is to avoid being the sole issuers or like gatekeepers of the ability to mint and manage ecological assets. A lot of people that we're working with are not coming from a Web3 background. So like in order to upgrade their technical literacy and ability to interact, like to use the Ecocredit module is going to take some time. But we have a few people that are kind of ahead of the game and super excited to do that. And, for each program that's or each methodology and type of credit that's coming into our ecosystem, ideally the people that are creating the methodology, the people that are working with project developers and land stewards are going to be the ones issuing those credits and managing those credits. Doesn't make sense for, like myself working within the Regen Registry program to be overseeing the issuance of, Amazonian forestry credits for like the Sikopai Yukun people. Like not really, the people that should be involved in that process should be the ones that are, working with the community members, like actually visiting the site, helping develop the monitoring reports. And so as we bring people into our ecosystem, the first thing that I do is I just help to assess like their willingness to take agency over credit, kind of the credit class management. So, of the 15 or so pilot projects that we have that are going to result in credit classes, picking 5 that we would create the credit class for them and then set them as the administrator. And then every time they have a new project that's registered, through Regen Registry, they would be in charge of the ones managing the issuance list, minting new batches of credits, and kind of decentralizing out that process. So I don't know, Gregory, if that answers your question, but when I think of, first steps towards decentralized registry program, that's what I think of.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different layers that are on my mind as well. I'm just looking at Twitter. We had a question from Timo about the difference between retired and canceled. So I'm happy to speak to that, and then maybe Ryan and Sam, if you guys want to add any color to that, you can. So retirement is when an address, someone is coming, purchasing a credit, and then choosing to retire that, which is the use of a carbon credit, which is to offset emissions, right? So they get a certificate of retirement and it's retired and it's no longer tradable, but it can be accounted on the corporate balance sheet or the jurisdictional sort of like nested accounting system for this unit of carbon has been retired. Canceled is the primary use case we designed that for is if a credit is moving off chain. For instance, like if a credit is being taken off of Regen Ledger and put back into a traditional sort of like Vera or gold standard registry system, or I think it's also likely to be used if credits are shown to be faulty, they could be canceled, and then they're not going to be retired or tradable at that stage. So that's the difference there between retirement and cancellation as a feature.
Yeah, and maybe just to add from the technical side of things, credits can be retired upon the issuance of credits. So when a credit batch is issued, you can specify a certain amount of credits that are tradable or retired.
Ryan, are you there?
I lost him as well. So
okay.
It seems like
I can probably fill in what he was going to say, which is just in terms of
currently we're working on the implementation. Might be getting a little ahead, but we're working on the implementation of like an order book model. So credits will also be able to be retired upon purchase of credits. So yeah. Is there anything that, Sam, you might want to add about retirement or canceling?
No, we lost you for a second there, but essentially you were just saying that upon issuance, credits can be issued into a retired state or an unretired state. And then, like you said, once we, in the future, implement order books, we can also retire on purchase.
Fantastic. So I want to sort of zoom back around and talk about sort of the layers of where things are going. So one of the concepts that Sam has been talking about is just, the vision of a world in which, many different people can participate in defining a credit class and start minting ecosystem service credits. And we can ask, well, I think we should talk about why is that important a little bit more. And we should also talk about how in this sort of like vision, how are we ensuring quality and accountability alongside that openness. I think that's probably a pretty good topic of conversation to dig into as we're moving forward. Some of this starts to get into what does Regen 3.0 look like, but I think it illustrates why we've made decisions the way we've made them and like what our theory of change is here. So maybe I'll take a quick crack and then pass it to each of you to just sort of comment on. So I think there's a couple of pieces. One is the understanding that we have from being pretty deep in the weeds around credit origination and verification. Many of you may know we have a science team that has worked to sort of build soup to nuts different verification systems from sort of grassland carbon plus, which is a soil regeneration based or carbon credit for carbon removals, to practice based pieces, to supporting people doing a variety of different things from agroforestry, forestry, mangrove, other things that have been happening. And one of the things from our perspective that's really important to understand is there are not all carbon is equal. So you have this diversity when we're talking about living carbon coming from landscapes. Also, there's the need to rapidly scale and expand carbon removal options much more quickly than centralized bureaucratic registry systems have been up until now capable of shouldering. So those are sort of like two major issues. On the other hand, how do we ensure quality? And I think that the essential theory here is step one, obviously, as everybody who's been listening is seeing, there's like a measured approach. First is issuers are limited and restrained through network governance. So only trusted entities are at the beginning going to be coming on board, but that parameter is set to shift as we build out the larger verification infrastructure that enables the community to start to curate and audit different classes of credits and rate them. So that once the rating system is up and running and the curation system is up and running, markets can have a much more finely grained sort of higher resolution understanding of the quality and therefore the price of a credit, but we're not gating people's ability to bring these new forms of ecosystem service value into the marketplace, which then obviously I think part of the theory here is that enables much more crowdsourced creativity. Many more people can participate in engaging and innovating. So with that sort of as a tee up, maybe I'll pass it to you, Sam, to see if there's anything any color that you'd like to add to that, or elements that I missed or that you'd like to upgrade.
No, I mean, I think like at a high level, you really hit the nail on the head with a lot of it. And I think just as a whole, there's so many elements and so many like things we could talk about within the context of, our theory of change and what we're trying to build. And it's a super complicated system, but one thing that really stood out to me is just like the ability to rapidly scale and engage people and provide the ability to people to start implementing nature-based solutions. Like within the more traditional registry systems, which are doing really great work, the unfortunate limitation is there are financial barriers to entry, like the programmatic requirements by some of these more traditional registries just like really make it difficult for people to quickly start adopting regenerative practices and get paid for them. And, like our theory of change is just like, we want to rapidly scale this. We want to engage science communities. Like a lot of like my work within, the science program is like, how can we bridge the gap between the academic community and the applied sciences so that we're rapidly iterating on like how are these regenerative practices affecting our landscape? And, in kind of connecting all the key players and in lending towards this decentralized approach where it's not a single framework we're trying to adopt and work around. It allows just a lot more people to adopt practices that we know are good for the ecosystems a lot more quickly.
Cool. Ryan, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think I'm good on that one.
Cool. Awesome. So I'm curious. We started to just you touched on this a little bit, Ryan, a moment ago, and I know there's always this tension forward-looking between engineering and product specification and the emerging market, and we're really I think tend to not want to make promises that we're not going to keep. So everybody should keep that in mind. But I'd love if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit on what's on the horizon for new modules that are going to be interacting with the Ecocredit module and sort of just what's emerging for Regen Ledger 3.0.
Yeah, no, I would love to go into that. As some of you probably are aware, one of the modules that the Regen Ledger team or Regen Network team has been working on for some time is a group module. And this allows for weighted voting and like the foundation for a DAO. And essentially, in combination with the Ecocredit module, this will allow for more decentralized governance of credit classes. So rather than having an address listed as an admin that's owned by a single user, you could have that address be a group account or a multi-sig account. And essentially, when the group module is available, then that credit class becomes governed by a body of people rather than an individual. And so that's one exciting use case of the group module alongside the Ecocredit module. Another feature that we're working on is the implementation of this marketplace functionality. We're currently building out an order books model, essentially allowing for people to list and buy eco-credits. And that's something that I'm actually working on implementing, and we should be seeing that one in V3. The initial implementation will support the direct buy orders. So essentially, you can directly buy you can directly buy credits from a listed sell order, and then we're also planning on implementing a filter option, so you could essentially define a filter criteria that you would use to buy credits, and it would find those credits that are aligned with that filter criteria. That's something that might be held off until the next version. And then we're also looking into a basket functionality, and this is something that's kind of been going back and forth between product and engineering. As Gregory mentioned, that this is something that we can't quite promise in the next version, but we are working on it, and we hope to see it land in the next version. But essentially supporting the ability to create baskets of credits. And I don't, in terms of the functionality and the implementation, I guess I'm going to hold off on saying too much, because it is something that's currently being designed by our product team. But these are a few of the features that we're looking at in implementing. Another thing that I mentioned earlier was the support for projects within the Ecocredit module. So essentially being able to define a project associated with a credit class. And that's something that came out of requests from the registry side of things. So maybe if there's any additional comments that Sam would like to provide on that. But these are several different things moving on the Ecocredit module side. There was discussions about creating separate modules or including it within the Ecocredit module, and currently most of this stuff is being included and expanding upon the Ecocredit module. And then further integration with the data module is another thing that's in the works with the Ecocredit module, making the data schemas more aligned. So lots kind of moving around after this initial implementation of the Ecocredit module. The things that you probably can expect to land in the next version would be like an initial implementation of this marketplace functionality for being able to list and buy and sell orders for Ecocredits.
And DAO, sort of like the first step of DAO functionality with the groups module, right?
Correct. So the groups module is actually something that we built on the Regen Ledger side of things, and then we're now implementing within the Cosmos SDK, because the Cosmos community thought that this would be a good module to have as a standard module within the SDK library. So it's currently being transferred over to the SDK, and then that will be included within the next release of the SDK, and then the next release of Regen Ledger will upgrade to that latest version of the Cosmos SDK, so that the group module will be available within Regen Ledger to use alongside the Ecocredit module.
Yeah, fantastic. So maybe it's worth just talking a little bit more. I know there's a bunch of listeners out there who are really stoked and hyped on sort of DAO as a social coordination tools, and I wonder if you don't mind, Ryan, just giving a little bit of sort of like what does the groups module do? How maybe is it different from some of the Ethereum approaches to token-based voting? And you've already kind of indicated how it interacts with the Ecocredit module, insofar as we can create essentially credit classes can be owned by a community of people through use of the groups module. So there can be sort of like standards bodies essentially that are voting on credit classes. But if you don't mind, just like doing a little bit more, adding a little bit more color to the groups module, I bet that folks are interested in that.
Yeah, I'll do my best. It's not something I've been working on directly, but it is something that I can speak on. So essentially with the group module, it's weighted voting. So there's associated weights with each account within a group. In a group, a member of a group will have an associated weight. And so rather than this token weighted model that we usually see within the space, there is the opportunity to set these weights within a group. And each group has an administrator. So the administrator has the ability to add, remove, and update members in the group, which could be another group. If you could see that mise on a beam kind of effect, a group within a group within a group. But an administrator would have the ability to add, remove, and update members in a group. And And yeah, in terms of creating decision policies, it's a decision policy.
It's not a token. Wait, there's no DAO token. How are we gonna sell our DAO token and make lots of money with the groups module?
There is no DAO token associated with the group module within the group module design, but it is something that you could create an integration alongside. That if you wanted to have a DAO token that was managed by the group, then that would be something that would be available. But this extracts the need for the group to be dependent on the token.
Right.
And that was one of the.
Well, I was just bringing that up sort of tongue in cheek because I was actually seeing some folks on Twitter today sort of, going like, oh, wow, I would really love to get like DAO coordination and engagement with people. But there may be tax implications of, like launching this DAO token, et cetera, et cetera. The cool thing of sort of like abstracting out, there's no real need for a token to give different addresses voting power over something. So anyway, there's like a nice function here where you can add that in if you like to, but stripping that away and allowing people to just have pure governance, I think actually is I'm pretty refreshed by those design decisions, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. There's a lot of people within the Cosmos ecosystem that are really excited about the group module, and we're really happy to have it been accepted into the Cosmos SDK as a standard module, and to see it land in the next release will be a huge milestone and really great feature to incorporate alongside the Ecocredit module. And just anyone who's looking to create a DAO on Regen Ledger or in relation to managing a credit class or for other purposes as well, they'll be able to start experimenting with that here soon. So there is the ability to experiment with the group module if you're interested currently on our experimental test network. It's Hambach test network. And that has the beta implementation of the group module that the Regen Ledger team built within the Regen Ledger repository. And we've stopped working on that version and started working on porting it over to the SDK. But there is an initial implementation that's available there. And if you're interested in like more information about the group module, we do have documentation on the group module on that same docs.regen.network website that we provided here at the beginning. And that will provide a little bit more information about the decision policies and the proposal process and voting for the group module if you're interested.
So sort of zooming out and resetting, I think there's a lot of folks I'm seeing in the spaces that are doing really fantastic climate work and excited about different things. Just to sort of like paint a picture of how this technology is going to allow you all to engage in kind of a community governed carbon registry and marketplace. So step number one is if you're developing a carbon removal project or avoided emissions project that's based on living systems, on living carbon, you can be engaging with our really fantastic science team, which Sam is a representative of, and working to bring to create a credit class that, if you would like, you can either work directly with R&D and we can create that credit class on your behalf, pending the acceptance of the rest of our community in our proposal to do that. You can work with us and we can help make you an admin of that, or you could apply directly to the community to have full sort of sovereignty over that system, depending on your sort of technical capability. And you can build a community around that credit class so that there is essentially a body that is helping you govern it, the attributes of it, the issuers of it, etc. So just to sort of like try to land that plane in how we're seeing this be really sort of owned and operated by the community. I'd love to just do a sort of circle around, and Sam, I'd love it if you would give people some insight into some of the most, what are you excited about right now? You get to interact with project developers and scientists doing really cool work all around the world. Do you want to just give people a little snapshot of some of the coolest things that you're seeing and what you're amped about?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Okay, so I think that there are a few things. So, just for those of you who are less familiar with like what the Regen Registry program does is we're really focused on like the entirety of nature-based solutions. So we're not just focused on carbon. We're focused on methodologies that improve water quality, biodiversity, fire resilience, soil health. And so, with that in mind, we've gotten a lot of really cool proposals for both carbon methodologies, but other types of credits as well. And one that I was really excited to kind of share that I heard about earlier this week was this idea of creating a biodiversity credit for big cats down in the protection of big cats like jaguars down in Brazil and Ecuador. And, big cats are a really important thing for the ecosystem. And also they can be used as what's called an indicator species. So they, like, understanding the presence of big cats and like their health, how many cubs they have, actually shows a lot of information about other species presence and how the ecosystem at large is doing. And what was proposed was putting forth a biodiversity credit for the funding of which would go to the protection of not only the big cats, but just the rainforest and ecosystem they live in. And it would be based off of different tiers of data. So you might have, 3 different credit classes. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but like for like a bronze, silver, and gold being like, you have lots of data in that area. You have camera traps. You're measuring, all these species, both flora and fauna that are present within that ecosystem. And there's a lot of assurance around the presence of a jaguar and their impact on the kind of ecosystem. And then, bronze would be like you generally know that they're there. You might have like a few data points. You might have one of them tracked. And so you're kind of addressing the level of rigor with the amount of data that you're providing. And I just thought that was a really cool non-carbon focused project. In terms of the carbon focused ones, we're working with like blue carbon projects in the Venetian province. There's, mangrove like projects down in Ghana and Mexico. There are, our own grasslands program is really exciting, and we're getting a lot of people enrolled in that, both within the U.S., down in Argentina, out in Australia. What
was the latest count of how many?
I would say around 10,000 hectares, but we've been in active conversation with a few groups that would be bringing in like 100,000 hectares to the grasslands program, which is huge. And there's actually this really cool group called Sequest.ai that's based in Berlin that has been doing a lot of work studying remote sensing of soil carbon. And so it's been really excited to just partner with them and talk with them and kind of bounce ideas about the science that goes into the methodology. And, I think that area of research is really being pushed forward at a pretty quick rate. So
while you're on that, you're at the nexus of a pretty large collaborative open source science community that we've been convening and participating in, between Open Team and the Earthshot community and Open Earth Foundation and many others. And I'm curious if you just want to, if people are stoked on the science side, where would they go to engage with you and this like large growing science team? Would that be on Regen's Discord? Where do people engage if they're geeky on sort of Earth observation science and Ecocredit verification?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say first one is our Discord. I think that Discord just lends itself as a little bit less used program within the science community at large. At least just, from my background, like my first exposure to Discord outside of just a gaming environment was Regen Network. And I know that there are a lot of scientists that don't really use it. So it'd be awesome to get more science engagement on our Discord. But, either that or reaching out directly to someone on our science team if you have a specific idea for a project or you want to contribute specifically to something. But then, like the Earthshot community is doing some really cool work with machine learning and remote sensing. So creating data products that, have everything from above ground biomass estimates to like the impacts of beaver dams on riparian ecosystems. So, for the Ecocredit module, like hop on Discord, we're really looking for people to engage. And also one thing that, I'm really focused on is trying to connect our methodology developers with the larger science community. And we're really pushing for this idea of an open source methodology approach. So, in Q1 and hopefully in January, we'll start to see a lot more proposals to the community of like, hey, we got this concept note for a methodology. We want to work on it. These are our needs. We need research in this area. We need software development help here. So, yeah.
Awesome. Super cool. Right. So let's zoom back out again. That was an awesome deep dive into a little bit about what's happening in the science side, kind of like what goes into an Ecocredit. And a lot of that that experience that the R&D Inc. team had bringing Carbon Plus grasslands to market and selling it to Microsoft parlayed into how we've structured the Ecocredit module. I'd love, while we're on the sort of like data side of things a little bit, maybe it's worthwhile. I don't know. This is kind of putting you on the spot, Ryan. And, I know there's a bit of complexity here, but would you feel comfortable chatting a little bit about the data module and like, on off-chain data, RDF approach and just like what's happening there and how that's going to be interacting with the Ecodata module and sort of enabling project developers and sort of creating efficiency in the verification process? Or is that maybe putting you on the spot too much?
I would say maybe a little bit, but on the spot in terms of my knowledge is somewhat limited. I do know that we are planning on including essentially this bare bones version of the data module in the next release as well. We've finished making changes to an initial beta version that was available on our test network, and this version is going to be focused on just anchoring and signing data. So essentially, yeah, as you mentioned, we are supporting RDF data as well as other data, and signing data will only be available for signing RDF data types on chain. But in terms of my knowledge, I don't know how much more I can speak on that, but it is something that if you are interested in learning more about the data module, we do have initial version available on Hambach, and people that are working on the data module more closely would be happy to answer questions in Discord. And we do have people who recently applied for a grant that are going to be working a little bit more on the data module in the coming year as well, and helping build out a user interface for that. But I think
I can just like hop in on less of the technical side of like how are we going to use the data module and what's the implementation look like. But from a science perspective, a lot of what we're lacking within the ecosystem is just centralized warehouses for data and data sharing between different academic institutions, farms, things like that. That would really help to accelerate the rate at which we can understand ecosystems. And one really good example is like soil carbon. Like soil carbon is an extremely difficult thing for us to understand because you literally have to go dig it up to be able to measure it. And so, one thing with the data module is like even like, you know, it's really important that we get a lot of this data on our ecosystem in a centralized way, you know, both to help validate and provide transparency around claims for ecological state, but also just to accelerate the science. And so, you know, would be really excited to see more use cases and engagement on, you know, data sharing and you know, kind of helping lean in a little bit more there from the community. So if you guys have ideas, start chatting in Discord.
And I know there's a lot of work. I mean, we're part of the Open Team community. There's a lot of work happening. And there's some of the folks who are going to be working on data module integrations, RSci, PharmOS, and our great Cambium validator running on Regen. So they're going to be digging into all of that, integrating. I mean, I think the vision there is to be able to integrate farmer management software in which data is sort of like collected in real time with Ecocredit verification systems and sort of remote sensing things, just to give people sort of like the high level vision here and what Sam's talking about, where there's sort of the ability for people to engage in the data economy in support of the economy, you know, the emerging carbon and ecosystem service economies, where really the cost to mint a high quality carbon credit can be driven down significantly by sort of leveraging and building out these toolkits for folks to engage with. So another piece that I'd like to sort of zoom around on before we go is actually to just kind of, I was curious, Ryan, if you'd be willing to share just a little bit about, you know, so Regen Network has a public blockchain called Regen Ledger. Regen Ledger is an application and domain specific blockchain that is built by a community, free open source software built by a community for the specific use case around ecological claims and data and the generation of assets. It's a very different developer paradigm than like an arbitrary smart contracting approach that many people may be more familiar with EVM or other systems. And you've done a fair amount of development across the Web3 space. And I'm curious if you wouldn't mind just sharing briefly about, just like how the developer experience differs working on Regen Ledger or maybe the broader Cosmos SDK.
Sure. Yeah. So with Regen Ledger, essentially it being built on top of Cosmos SDK as this application-specific blockchain, it has access to these modules that are included within the Cosmos SDK that are essentially these standard modules that almost any blockchain is going to be using the majority of those standard modules because it provides functionality like staking and rewards and minting tokens and sending tokens to different accounts. And so all that functionality is basically compartmentalized into these different modules that are interacting with each other. And then within the context of Regen Ledger, we're creating this Ecocredit module, which is a custom module that is that our team has built. And like I mentioned with the group module, we originally were planning on that being a custom module, that it's being ported over the SDK module, SDK repository. And when you're thinking about modules, essentially you're thinking about these independent state machines. And so each module has its own state, and it has its own set of transaction messages and query methods. And essentially these are compartmentalized independent little state machines that you can plug into this larger application that we're calling Regen Ledger is our blockchain application. And within the context of like maybe thinking about Ethereum versus developing within the Cosmos ecosystem, these modules are essentially what would replace a smart contract. If you were having a very elaborate set of smart contracts that were managing a DAO, essentially that functionality would be replaced with this module. And the Cosmos ecosystem world. And then there's also the opportunity to develop with smart contracts through modules such as like the implementation of CosmWasm, which essentially when you have CosmWasm implemented, you can develop with using REST contracts. So the ease and comfort of developing within the Cosmos ecosystem versus developing with smart contract, it all depends upon your background and experience. Essentially, people that have invested a lot of time developing with Solidity and smart contracts and learning that somewhat difficult and language as an onboarding experience. But once you get involved in that space, then like understanding and working with smart contracts is relatively easy. But within the Cosmos ecosystem, you're using a language that's already been used widely, Golang, and you're developing in this module architecture and essentially providing all that functionality and using other modules as templates. And like when you're developing a module within the Cosmos SDK repository, you're using protobuf, and protobuf basically allows you to define your API in a protofile, and then it auto-generates a lot of the functionality for you. So there is a lot of code that is being auto-generated for you, which makes development within development of modules much easier as well. I think personally, I don't really have like a favorite necessarily. It's been really great working with smart contracts in the Ethereum ecosystem as well as with modules in the Cosmos ecosystem, and then seeing the combination of smart contracts landing in Cosmos ecosystem with CosmWasm is something I haven't quite played around with as much. But yeah, the developer experience is slightly different, and I guess, yeah, does that answer your question, Gregory?
That's fantastic. And I'll just sort of like end by saying also there's, fast finality Ethereum virtual machine coming soon to Cosmos, which is also very exciting. So you're going to get to see this like really wild composability start to happen. But I think that's drifting a little further afield. I wanted to just invite Kinishanko up. Hey man, you maybe had a question or a comment, and then maybe after your question or comment, we'll wrap up. I know there's another cool refi room that's going to be kicking off here shortly, and probably folks have other things to do. So yeah, if you want to just share your name, your question, and comment, we can answer that, and then leap into the rest of our days.
Yeah, hey guys. My question related to the sort of Oracle verification problem you guys were talking about before, so I don't want to flip it too hard back to that. I think you gave a pretty good answer. And I guess my question is, so I worked a number of years in the CDM carbon markets back in the day before they died. And what we always had to do when we were installing these carbon reduction systems, whether it was like an anaerobic biodigester or whatever, was pay these super expensive verification companies to come in and validate that our protocol math was correct and that they thought the systems we had in place, to guarantee that the amount of carbon we said was going to be reduced actually stayed reduced over years and stuff like that. Are you approaching that problem by starting with applications which can directly link into technology, like you talked about with the farm management system, such that you don't need verification oracles, or are you working on verification oracles? And how are you thinking about or approaching that kind of ball of wax?
Sam, do you want to take a crack? I definitely have a couple things I want to share, but go for it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's hard because the standards within the voluntary carbon markets are very much focused on VVBs doing a lot of this work, and so our approach is we're not taking a single approach to do this. There are people within the Regen Registry program that want and are more comfortable with going the more traditional route and relying on these ISO certified bodies to help go in and assess the state of carbon and permanence over time. And if they want to do that, that's perfectly fine. The approach that we took for our grasslands methodology is like, hey, there are a lot of people that might not have an ISO certification or be part of a VVB, but can actually do this work. and this group of people who are calling monitors and verifiers within our ecosystem are scientists that are really excited to, visit the farm or develop applications like remote sensing, using remote sensing data, using in situ, soil samples, things like that to actually do this validation and verification work. And, within our own team, we're not necessarily creating verification oracles, but within the ecosystem at large, a lot of that work is being done. And we're really hoping to start to integrate that into our system. So, it's not one or the other, but we are trying to create this more open system and really rely on the transparency involved to, kind of validate claims.
Yeah, awesome, Sam. So, and I want to just add a little bit more color, sort of from my perspective, just as Sam is saying, that we're not taking a sort of here's the silver bullet approach. We're sort of have several elements to the strategy. One is essentially to decentralize, as Sam's saying, the verification process, where a broader group, a broader community can engage with the verification process, and we anchor their data and their reputation on chain. So there's sort of the immutable record of who said what about where, using what methodology and what data, that is directly linked to the minting process of an ecological credit. So that's sort of step one, is and the eco credit module, and then and as we upgrade to version 3.0, having the data module online essentially enables that to happen. Then there's sort of okay, what are the technologies that increase the quality or reduce the cost of data and models that are being used to monitor and then quantify carbon outcomes? And that's where, fun integrations and engagement around satellite or machine learning or in some cases IoT, although IoT is not super applicable to most landscape scale work yet. I do think there's going to be some fun stuff coming up with acoustic monitoring for biodiversity and other things like that. That's going to be really great. But at the moment, if we're thinking about carbon, it's mostly reducing cost. And as Sam was mentioning, the main way we already accomplished that in the Grasslands Carbon Plus program and credit class was to reduce the cost of soil sampling by using satellite and machine learning to extrapolate and allow for less soil sampling per hectare while increasing the accuracy, essentially, of the claims. And then, as Sam said, also decentralizing out who is accepted to go sort of take the soil sample and produce and sort of have that cross-edited, audited. So hopefully that's helpful. We're coming up against the top of the hour here. I know our team has stuff to do. I do as well. Super grateful for everybody hopping on to listen. I think we'll try to do these more often. And just excited for this emerging regenerative finance space. Excited for Regen Ledger 2.0, which shipped and launched a little bit ago, and excited for the upcoming governance vote that's going to enable R&D Inc. to start actively issuing credits on chain here shortly. So thanks everybody for joining us again. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sam. And Dave, as always, thanks for convening us. And
pleasure.
Yeah, rock on, everybody.
Have a great day, Regenerate.
Yeah. Thanks so
Thank
much,
you all.
Gregory.
Yeah, thanks.
Adios.